Hello, Math 96. We're going to do notebook page 97 and 98 today. We skipped notes pages 94 and 95, and the blank one is on 96. Okay, so we're going to solve a quadratic equation by taking square roots. Since we've been working with radicals, and it seems to make sense to keep going right here. So the essential question on the top of page 97 is, what are the steps to solving quadratics by taking a square root? And by the end of this lesson, you should be able to say that you can solve an equation with an exponent of 2 by taking a square root on both sides of the equal sign. The homework will appear at the last slide. It's page 512 out of the textbook, number 8 through 26, and skip number 16. So here's a picture of where we're going to be moving into. So this is going to be the big aha in mathematics for the end of the school year. And I just want to talk real briefly, you don't have to do anything except listen, about this graph that's here, which I'm going to copy in blue. So this is called a parabola. Oops, there we go. It's from a quadratic function, and it's curved, U-shaped, and these two dots right here are the big deal about quadratic functions in mathematics. So one of these dots crosses at -4. The other dot is at -2. And you can see those right here in how they show points of intersection. What they mean is the blue graph comes down, hits the x-axis. At -4, the blue graph comes back up, hits the x-axis again at -2, and continues. Well, those two spots where the graph hits the x-axis, they're called x-intercepts, and they're a huge deal in math and what you need to study with me until the end of the year. Hopefully, we'll be able to do our big project on that. Okay, so that's just a general overview of where we're going. Okay, so if you can take a minute to go ahead and copy down these steps. Let me just grab another pencil, sorry. So we're going to solve by taking square roots. So you can hit pause here so you can copy down those notes. Okay, so the notes are to isolate the squared terms. So get x squared, or if the problem says x, the quantity x plus 5 squared, you want to isolate that on one side of equal. Okay, and then take square roots on both sides of equal. You must add in the plus or minus symbol on the right side of equal, and then reduce final answers. So what is this plus or minus symbol that we use in math? It's a short way to say a positive answer and a negative answer. For instance, plus or minus, I don't know, 6, that means positive 6, and it means negative 6. Okay, so there's two answers, two answers, but we don't write it out as x equals 6, x equals -6. That takes too long in math, so us math teachers are kind of lazy. So we write x equals plus or minus 6. So that's what that means. Okay, and we'll work with that as we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve some equations by taking square roots. I'm just going to write this out so that I have a little room. So my my squared term is isolated. In other words, there's only x squared on one side, and then the equal sign. So in order to solve this, the rule is to take a square root on both sides. Remember, there's a hidden 2, and add plus or minus on the right. Now, what does that do? Why is that? Well, this square root symbol eradicates or gets rid of the x squared, the squared term, because what is the square root of x squared? Just x. Right? The square root of x squared is just x because it takes a pair to get out. So this little 2 symbol on the radical took care of that because we have to solve for x. We can't leave something as x squared, right? Up here, that's not an answer. X squared equals 25. That's not an answer. That's a problem. We need x equals, right? Okay, so that's why we take a square root on both sides. So that's all you're learning. Take a square root on both sides. And then bring down your plus or minus and just ask yourself, what's a square root of 25? It's 5. Just 5 times 5. Square root of 25. And that's it. That's your final answer. X is equal to plus or minus 5. That means x equals 5 and x equals negative 5. Okay? Now, I'm just going to show you briefly what that means. That means if the related graph, let me switch to blue, is right here, the related graph, if you were to graph this problem, and just focus right here. See, there's a negative 5 and a 5. You can kind of ignore that black line. They're just showing you that x is negative 5, so over negative 5 and up and plot it. The other way is over positive 5 and plot it. So I'm just trying to relate it to those x numbers down here at negative 5 and 5, right? Okay, let's do another one. Okay, so I'm going to write down 3x squared equals 6. I have to isolate x squared. I have to get x squared alone, so I have to divide by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. That's not an answer. I have x squared equals. How do I get rid of the square part? I take the square roots on both sides. I add plus or minus. So that's this new procedure you're learning today. So the square root eradicates the 2, so out pops just x. And plus or minus square root of 2 is the answer, because we're not going to reduce the square root of 2 to the decimal. But again, you can see that the x amount here would be square root of 2 and negative square root of 2. Okay? Really let me just show you this. This line is not important. They're just trying to show you where it crosses. I don't really like that line. It's a little confusing. So those red dots are over rad 2 up 6. The other way is left negative 2 up 6. That's where those dots are. Same with the one over here. Over 5 up 25. Negative 5 up 25. So we're focusing on the x part. Okay. So now we're going to go and do this one. So we have to isolate x squared. So you have to pop over the 2. So subtract 2 to both sides. Bring down negative 5x squared equal to 2 minus 2 is 0. Cross it out. And then 0 minus 2 is just negative 2. Now we have to divide by negative 5 in order to isolate x squared. So divide by negative 5 both sides. Don't panic, it's a fraction. So this one cancels out. A negative over a negative is just 2/5. No panicking, it's just a fraction. Okay, once x squared is isolated, take the square roots on both sides, add plus or minus. Out pops x. And the answer is plus or minus square root of 2/5. Square root of 2/5, which we can't change. It's just square root of 2/5. We don't want to change that to a decimal. Now, the reason why they have different numbers here is they rationalize denominators. We're not going to worry about it. But again, it's the same number. Okay, let's do another one. 4x squared plus 9 equals 0. Pop over your 9. So subtract 9, and then we're going to divide by 4. 0 minus 9 is negative 9, and now we have to divide by 4. So x squared is equal to, this one is negative 9 over 4. Okay, to solve for x, we have to get rid of the square, so take the square roots, add plus or minus, and now we can reduce this one, the square root of negative 9/4. I kind of ran out of room, so I'm going to go up here, okay? So we're at the step of x squared is equal to plus or minus square root negative 9/4. Okay? So when we take the square root on both sides, out pops x. The square goes away. Plus or minus, I'm going to break up square root negative 9 over square root 4. We've done that before. One big fraction, just break it up into 2. Take your time. Okay, keep your plus or minus. You got to remember that. going to do the bottom first because it's easier. Square root of 4 is just 2, isn't it? Square root of 4 is 2. It's just 2. Okay, now we have to remember how to do square root of -9 up here, okay? This one's just 2. Okay, square root of 9 is 3. What happens when we have a negative in there? We went over that yesterday. So square root of -9. I'm going to show all the work down here, but you can just listen. We can break that up into the square root of 9 times the square root of -1. Remember, -1 is worth I, so out pops I. And then square root of 9 is just 3, so it's 3I. So our final answer is 3I over 2. You'll probably see that in a textbook as 3 over 2I. Either way is fine. This is the proper way to do it. So that's our final answer. X is equal to plus or minus 3I over 2, or 3/2 I. Now, what does that mean on the graph? Well, it means that there's no intercepts. So the graph did not touch this x-axis. It's an imaginary answer. Okay? So there is no actual x-intercepts. Okay? All right, let's move on. Let's keep solving. Okay, so this one just changed because there's more than just x squared equals. This time it's x minus 2 squared equals, right? So that's just how this problem changed. So it's just an extra little step. We're still going to do taking square roots on both sides, okay? So x minus 2 squared. I'm just giving myself a little room. Okay, the procedure is to take the square roots on both sides, add plus or minus on the right. So the square root of x minus 2 is that item, x minus 2, equal to plus or minus rad 7. So remember, the square root gets rid of the 2 and out pops x minus 2, right? Okay. At this step, you can go ahead and drop the parentheses. Leave a little space right after the equal sign so I can show you how to do this. Because the parentheses, it's not helping anything. It's like they got out of the radical, so you can drop the little parentheses. Now I need x equals. I need the answer x equals for our final answer, so let me show you what to do. Please pay attention, this is very important. So we need to pop this -2 to get x all alone. We need to pop it to the other side. We're going to add 2. You're going to add 2 right to the front. So you're going to pop it in the front of the 2 plus or minus, okay? So our final answer would be 2 plus or minus radical 7. So please learn that because this is going to become important for the end of the year. So when you pop this, it pops in front of the plus or minus sign. So add 2 to both sides, right? So the final answer is 2 plus or minus square root 7. And I will talk to you later about where is that on this x-axis for that graph, okay? I'll talk to you about that later. Let's just learn the procedure right now. Okay, let's do the next one. So now to shorten up your work, as a student, this is what I would do. Oh, something's squared, so I have to take the square root on both sides, add plus or minus. So that's something you can do like that, if you want to do that. I'm going to write it out, right? So you could have done that over here, plus or minus, right? That's just like a little shorter way to do your math. I'm going to write it out because I'm the teacher. A little space. Okay, so I'm going to solve. I have a square, so I take the square roots. I add plus or minus. That means x minus 3 pops out. And I can do plus or minus square root of 81. It's plus or minus 9. Square root of 81 is 9 times 9 is plus or minus 9. Now it's important for you to keep that 9 right behind the plus or minus, okay? Now we got to pop this right into the front. I need to move it to the other side, so I'm going to add 3. So this will become x equals 3 plus or minus 9. Now, that's 2 numbers. Watch what I'm going to do. This is not hard. Because 9 came out of the radical clean, like over here, rad 7 just stays in. It's a decimal. But because you can actually do this math, I need you to learn to break this up. So, one answer is 3 plus 9 for this part. The other answer is 3 minus 9 for this part. So that's how you take care of plus or minus. 3 plus 9, 3 minus 9. And now we actually have to figure that out. Obviously, 3 plus 9 is 12. 3 minus 9 is negative 6. So our final answer, and now listen, you guys, that's where your 2 dots cross the x-axis, one at negative 6 and one at 12. Remember, because we're studying where does the graph cross the x-axis, and we just found them. They're at whole numbers, one at negative 6 and one at 12. Okay, I was trying to kind of show you the graphs. So our final answer then is going to be x equals negative 6 and 12. If you want to write them out separate, it's okay. If you want to keep them separate in your head. That's our final answer. I like to use just a comma. Okay, one more, I think. Okay, so far we covered one where the answer is 2 plus or minus rad 7. Then we covered another one that comes out to be regular numbers, negative 6 and 12. The next one's going to come out to be imaginary. I think one of them is. Oh, this one we're going to have to break down. Okay, so 7 and 8. We're going to go ahead. 7 we're going to break down, and 8's going to turn out to be imaginary. So let's go. All right, let Miss Artofer write it all down. You can take the square root, add plus or minus on the right side like that for real quickness if you want. So I'm going to take the square root, add plus or minus on both sides. So out pops, so this goes away. Out pops x plus 5 is equal to plus or minus square root 24. Now we're going to hang out on this side and we're going to simplify. What should we break 24 into? I'm going to do it off on the side. 24. For me, I know right away. What's the good number? I want to find a 4, a 9, a 16, a 25. I'm not going to go 2 and 12 because then I have to do a factor tree. So I know on the top of my head 4 times 6 is 24. So square root of 24, I can break up into 4, rad 6, right? Then I simplify. What's square root of 4? Out comes 2 and stays 6. Out comes 2 and stays 6. So I'm going to simplify this right side and write plus or minus. And instead of square root 24, I'm going to put 2 rad 6. And we're going to be practicing that. And bring down the other side. So you want to simplify your radical first. Now we're going to pop over 5. And we'll be done. So this time I have to subtract 5 to both sides. So our final answer is x equals, because this one goes away, negative 5 plus or minus 2 rad 6. So here we are combining what we've learned about radicals and simplifying radicals into a bigger problem. So we're going to keep working on this. This is some advanced math. You did review this in Algebra 1. And I think in geometry as well, and Algebra 2. Okay, let's keep working on it. Let's do another one. This time we're going to have I involved. Imaginary numbers. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to write it down. a little space. I'm going to solve by taking square roots on both sides, adding plus or minus. You can do that by going like this on the top to make your math quicker. Okay, so when I take the square root, out pops x plus 1. This goes away. And I have plus or minus square root of negative 25 to deal with. So square root of negative 25 from yesterday's lecture can be broken down into 25 times negative 1. Square root of 25, out pops 5. And you have to know that the square root of negative 1 is I. Well, this is Miss Sartofer. Okay. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and pop right this over. Subtract 1 to both sides. So x is equal to negative 1, and we reduce this to 5i. Negative 1 plus or minus 5i, and that's our final answer. Okay, one more slide. Here's your homework. Page 512, number 8 through 26, and skip number 16. Thank you.